Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Sunbelt Baseball Podcast with Matt and Ty. I'm Matt Stewart, legendary coach, Texas State Bobcats. Ty Harrington is with me, and a week from now, Coach, we'll be calling the Sunbelt Baseball Tournament, and we'll do a minimum of 15 games, as many as 17 games in the span of a week. Are you ready?
I will be. I had 4 games this week and this past week, so I'm trying to get myself into shape for that.
You're building up.
Well, you and I probably think 15, but it's been, what was it, 17 last year, right? We
Yeah,
did every one of
17.
it
Yeah,
possible last year.
It
And
was, we played the maximum last year.
yeah, either way, you and I will have a great time. It doesn't matter. One way or another, it'll be fun, and it always is. And I look forward to it. It's just kind of hard to believe that it's here. And next week will be, next Tuesday, right? I mean, I think
Starting
everybody
on
gets
Tuesday.
kicked off when
2
the
games
playoff.
on Tuesday. We have the first round elimination games on Tuesday. That's cutthroat baseball right there, man. You're
It
playing
is.
as a 1-game play-in.
It is, but I know a bunch of teams, which I know we're about to talk about. I know a bunch of teams right now that would take that, knowing it was cutthroat baseball, knowing they had a chance to just get in there, and they would take it hands down right now, today, and be ready, because you and I were talking off air just a second ago. It's ironically, I think we talked about this 7 weeks ago, that it just was shaping up like it was going to be one of those years that the last weekend was going to be intense, and there were going to be teams getting left out by 1 game, or as you just said just a second ago, by somebody has the tiebreaker over them, whether it's, they own the series against them head to head, or whoever, what is it? I guess whoever was first place, or no, mutual team. If you didn't play against each other, then it would be a mutual opponent, right? And
Correct.
And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out between a handful of teams, and what does that look like? And we're going to find out next weekend, or this weekend. I'm sorry.
And we'll go more depth in this, as we sit here today, getting ready for the final week of the regular season in the Sun Belt, only 4 of the 10 spots in the tournament have been clinched. Louisiana, Southern Miss, Troy, and App State. And App State has been sneaky good down here the stretch, and they're in the 4th spot right now. But only 3 of the top 6 teams that lock in, the double elimination right off the bat have been locked in. Those are the top 3. App's not in that group. And we go into the final week. There are 8 teams still mathematically with a chance to claim one of those 6 spots. Now, Marshall is the longest of shots. So, I mean, they'd have to pull off a miraculous 3-game sweep of Coastal. Not that Coastal's playing great by any means, but still, that would be historically pretty big for Marshall to knock off Coastal, even though they do have them in Huntington, West Virginia. So anything could happen. And Marshall has had series where they've pitched very well. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But realistically, we've got 7 teams that are competing for those 6 spots. And I'm pretty sure it's going to come down to one of the top 6 spots, 5 and the 6th spot, maybe even the 5 spot. That's going to be decided by a tiebreaker. And who gets in the 10th spot, maybe even the 9th spot, could end up coming down to a tiebreaker. And it might not be, as you alluded to, head-to-head competition.
Yeah, there's so many scenarios. I tried to play through some of them this morning. And obviously familiar with Texas State because I do a lot of their games. I did their 3 games this weekend, and familiar with what their path has to look like. They've got a tough one going to Southern Miss, but they are playing better. They had to win 2 out of 3 against Troy, and they did it. I mean, look, they come up with a walk-off home run. And by the way, the first walk-off home win they've had this year, and it comes on the last day for them with a walk-off home run. And, and they were down in the 8th, and Chase Moore got a big hit in the 8th to tie the game. And then he comes back up in the 11th and hits a 2-run homer and to win the game. And so, I mean, there was a lot of drama out there on their field, and they gave themselves a chance to keep their hopes alive. And I think had they lost that game, I do think it was going to be really tough on them at that point going to Southern Miss and what that was going to look like. And so there were some great games. I know we're about to talk about them, so I'm going to let you fire away and lead the way with the rest of them.
Yeah, just real. I got your game. That game you're talking about is one behind me right now. The
Yeah,
the
I kept,
the Sunday
I
series.
kept seeing, some of that. I got to say, I'm going to tell you something now. You know, I'm a big Skylar Meade fan. So all weekend, he is the most active, hustling coach I've seen all year. Foul ball goes over there, anywhere in the dugout, he's picking them up and he's throwing them. He's got this nice, beautiful left-handed arm action,
Right.
throwing them across the
Yep.
field, hustling out there, picking up the bats, taking a couple swings, and then sprinting out to the mound. I mean, he's a ball of energy and fun
He's
to
a young
watch.
man.
I know that, and he is, but he's got you know what he does too, though? He got a great aura around him.
Yeah,
He
he
really
does.
does, and on top of that, being an incredibly, gifted, I think, gifted creative coach, and but it
Yeah.
was a fun series.
Well, speaking of that series, we're going to talk to Stephen Trout coming up a little bit later on here in the podcast after they pulled off to what has to this point has been the biggest series win for them the entire year, and now that could be they'll need to do that again this weekend. But we'll get into all that when
Yeah,
we talk to Stephen Trout, hear from him a little bit later on in the podcast. And just one more thing. I mean, I'm watching that Coastal Georgia State game on Sunday, and it's the third game of the series. They've split the first two. They've scored like 1,000 runs each, and because there's neither team is gifted with a whole lot of pitching right now for various reasons. And with Coastal, certainly it's an injury situation that we've talked about plenty of times on this podcast. But I mean, Coastal's
yeah,
down 6-3 in the sixth inning and they are staring at their season. I mean, they are down 6-3. They dropped this game to Georgia State. They are in a world of trouble, and they're still not
yeah,
out of the woods yet. But they're in a better position now, and Georgia State's the team not in a good position. But I'm like thinking this isn't possible. They just had Gary Gilmore Day yesterday, where they
yeah,
honored the coach. They're having Gary Gilmore Day yesterday. Are you going to tell me that they're going to not be eliminated, but they're going to put themselves in a situation where they may be eliminated and not even make the Sun Belt tournament? It looked like that, and then they exploded. They had a big 8-run inning. They ended up run ruling the game 17-7, and kind of looked like, oh well, yeah, there's Coastal. They reminded us
yeah,
exactly what Coastal was all about. So let's get into our number one story. Number one story's got to be Louisiana. They clinched
yep,
the number one. They have, in my mind, they're the regular season champs. But to officially not share the regular season championship, they got to win one more, or Southern Miss has to lose one more to be the outright regular season champs. But they're the number one seed. They've got it locked up. And to me, what they did at Georgia Southern this past weekend, Coach, was really kind of a statement. I think they were 4-5 in their previous three Sun Belt series. Now they'd played hard teams, but to me, they made a statement. They came out and they run ruled Georgia Southern in the first game, 19-3. They sweep that series in Statesboro from a Georgia Southern team, I think, that had won 7 in a row coming in.
yeah. I think if you go in there and look, um, I got to watch some of the games because there were odd times to the games I was doing. And then I have been known to have on other games while I'm doing the other a game because this I can see it over there and see what's going on. And they showed some toughness late in both the last two games. Tight games where Georgia Southern came back, rallied back. Got close, got within a run, tied them, whichever it may be, and then Louisiana late in the game have some big hits come up, and then of course Kyle DeBarge again has another great, I mean, and then he made a
Is he going to be
play.
the player of the year in the conference, you think?
I got to think unless I got to think
I
he's
mean,
he's got to be one of the top candidates. I
no doubt.
don't know how that's all going to play out. He made a play, a backhand play to his right that was just crazy looking, and all of a sudden I'm watching, trying to do the game. I'm watching him make an unreal play, and so again he had an unbelievable weekend, and their at bats late in games are really good and really impressive, and again they're on the road, and they're still performing like that. And so I think they're the number one story. I think they're obviously they've clinched, the number one seed part of this. And you got to think that they'll probably find a way to win one game this weekend or something, because they've got a lot at stake as well when it comes to not, if they keep playing good, they're not going to have to win the tournament. Maybe if they go in there and win a game or two, then they can let their staff rest and not really press their staff. So this weekend is important for them as well, not only just clinching it, but also putting themselves in a situation that they don't have to go in there and go deep into the tournament and really put a lot of pressure on their staff.
Yeah, I think DeBarge will end up being the player of the year. D1 Baseball came out with their rankings of collegiate baseball players. They have him as the number one rated shortstop in the country for the MLB draft.
Yeah,
Good for him.
He's good. Now, again, look, when you see him, if you walk up to him, you're like, yeah, he looks like a good player, right? And then all of a sudden, his spikes get inside that white line, and this person appears out of that uniform, in that uniform, that just play after play, his angles to balls, an old infield instructor. I love to watch him, and his angles are so clean and so good and perfected. And then obviously he's he's a great offensive player. He has the ability to have power. He has the ability to hit the ball the other way. He has ability, and it is an ability in my mind, to take a walk. He has the ability to do the little part of the game too, to create runs for the Cajuns. And so he's a complete player, and that's why he is. And look, there's a lot of good shortstops out there in the country right now.
Yeah.
And so to be, rated number one, and that is impressive in itself.
Yeah, our number two story, and we won't spend too much time on it because we're going to talk to Coach Trout here coming up in just a few minutes, was what Texas State was able to do against the team that was the hottest team in the conference. And not that they just beat them, but the way they pitched them. That's the thing that has to give you optimism, and you covered the series, all three games, is the Bobcats pitching. Now they've had some spotty offense, and they've had some guys that could probably do more than they've done. They've had up and down years, but the pitching over the weekend, especially with Cam Bush and McCafferty combo starting that game on Friday night and pitching a 4-hit shutout. When I saw that, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, one of the things that Troy does really well, and it is a lot of their offense, is they're willing to take walks, and they're willing to be patient and not swing it, pitches out of the strike zone and get bad counts, and they're willing to work hard at that, and they have. But what Texas State did is they threw a lot of strikes, and then what they were capable of doing also is they were able to throw the ball on top of the left-handed hitters. They were able to use the breakers underneath them, and when they had to have a strikeout, in a lot of innings. I think Troy left on maybe 11 in game 3 or something similar to that. They were able to come up with a strikeout in big moments. And again, McCafferty in game 1 and Cam Bush, who started game 1, was so good. First pitch strikes. They didn't walk a lot. And all week at 20 or 29 innings, whatever it was, total 30 innings, Texas State had one bad inning. And that was the inning they gave, game 2. Troy
the
was
5-run seventh
based on 4. Yeah, they gave up 4 walks and a hit batsman. And so that was a game that, they could have had a chance to win as well. But you can't go back and change that because, again, getting walks is part of what Troy does. They don't swing early and unless it's a strike. And so Texas State did a great job. They played great defense. And Troy, you could see where Troy's really good. I mean, I look at you, and you almost kept waiting. When are they going to get that big hit? And they just could not come up with a big hit. And like I said earlier, when Texas State needed to get them out with runners on, they were able to get a huge strikeout more times than anything else.
And so now Texas State now has to go play the new hottest team in the Sun Belt. You got Southern Miss. They've won 7 in a row. They obliterated Arkansas State over the weekend. I hate it for the Red Wolves. I'm a big fan of Tommy Raffo. I've known him
Absolutely.
since he was the second baseman for Mississippi State.
Yeah.
It shows you how long I've been calling games, and they're not going to make the tournament. But Southern Miss took advantage of that. They go in there and they take care of business, and now, they've got a good chance to lock down that number 2 seed. The 2-3 seed, it doesn't really matter. It just you're going to be in the same bracket. You're not going to be in the bracket with Louisiana if you're in that 2 and 3 spot. So I guess that's what you're looking at. They don't have a whole lot to play for other than they're just a great baseball program and they'll be out there playing to win. I can tell you this, Slade Wilkes is on an absolute tear. Their DH, he's got a 24-game hitting streak now. He belted 3 home runs over the weekend.
Oh, I think now let me go back and say this, and I think that Southern Miss has a lot to do this weekend. Like, I mean, they can ill afford to allow Texas State to come in there and win 3 games from them.
Because I agree with that.
From an RPI perspective, they're hunting. They need to do good this weekend, and because they put themselves in a situation where if they win the 3 games or 2 games or 1 game, and then if they win 1, they're going to have to go to the tournament maybe and win. Who knows what that looks like, right? You put yourself a little bit of interest to the committee to be playing good late in the year, and so they've got a lot going on this weekend. And again, I think with Louisiana not only trying to clinch, but same thing. They're trying to keep that RPI going, and so this weekend, along with those top 3 teams that have already secured themselves in there, they've got some opportunities as well, and from an RPI and getting in without having to win the tournament.
Yeah, I'll just breeze through some of this other stuff, and then there's one other thing I want to talk about before we talk to Coach Trout here. South Alabama took the series from ULM, walked it off in 13 innings. Man, they were like playing late on Sunday. ULM really put up a fight.
Yep.
South Alabama absolutely had to have that, and because they're going to Louisiana this weekend. So,
they needed
haven't
that.
played there.
Really, they needed to win 2 out of 3 for sure. They probably could have helped themselves if they would have found a way to be able to sweep. But they weren't. ULM, who's a pretty good team as well, was playing as hard as they could. And now, because you're right, that makes it interesting for South Alabama. They've got to figure out how to win. If you look at some of those scenarios, they've got to win one for sure.
They just can't get swept.
Yeah, and that's right. And so they've got to get in there and get busy too.
Yeah. James Madison won 2 out of 3 at home against Marshall. The Dukes I'm going to hit on them in this next subject real quick, but that's been a historical. This is the first time in like over a decade they've had a 30-15 season, and what I mean by that is they've had back-to-back, because they did it last year, 30 overall wins and 15 conference wins. So Coach Eikenberry's done a really good job here, and they'll be a team to watch. They got a shot at getting in that top 6 and not having to play in that play. And in fact, right now, they would be if the tournament started today. And James Madison will be at Troy this weekend. And they're playing at Virginia Tech on Tuesday night. So not an easy week for the Dukes as they go on the road. They've been great at home. Not as good like most teams on the road as they are at home. So App State took 2 out of 3 from Old Dominion. App State has been the sneaky good team. They're in the 4 spot right now. And they're getting some great pitching from Dante Cherico. We had him in our starting 9 last week. He had another fabulous start for him. Didn't get the win, but had a career-high 8 innings, 8 strikeouts. Steensma, their other starter, has been really good. And they're going to be a team to watch there in the tournament. Of course, they kind of made their presence known last year when they got to the semifinals. Remember, they beat Southern Miss.
They did
on that Saturday, and they forced the elimination game in the semifinals. Of course, they were out of pitching at that point, and Southern Miss came back and run-ruled them. But could be a different story this year. They're a year older, and I think they're even a little bit better than they were last year. So that'll be interesting. And then Coastal. Go ahead.
Yeah, something about App, and you just said that as I think it was 3 weeks ago, something like that. They played on the road with somebody, and no. I remember they played at home at Coastal and got behind, had to battle back, and came back and won a game, and then there was a back and forth game, got an extra inning game with them, and then all of a sudden you look up the next weekend they won 2, and so they just kind of quietly is the right word for it, had started playing better and winning. And I'm like you, I think it is an older team. I think it is a more mature offensive team. And maybe they're now trending and playing their best baseball and not this doesn't sound right, but sometimes when in a colder climate, you haven't had as much time out on the field as some of the
Right.
warmer, and you all of a sudden start playing late in the year, maybe a little more fresh, and you start to play at a higher level. So maybe they've really hit their stride at this point in
And
the season.
Hunter Wilder had a walk-off homer for him in their Game 2 victory. Of course, C.J. Boyd was a star for him last year. They added Banks Tolly to the mix this year. He's going to be all Sun Belt first team. 21
Yep.
bombs on the season, and then Austin St. Laurent, they've got him back playing shortstop. Now I don't know the story, and we'll figure that out here in the next week when we talk to all
Yeah.
the coaches. But they got him playing shortstop again, where he started his career.
Yeah.
Remember, they moved him out of that spot. They got him back there playing in the shortstop spot again. So, and then the Coastal Georgia State, that was just a wild, slugfest. Just an absolute slugfest. Final scores: the Chants won the first game 17-13. Panthers won the second game 10-9. And then, the Panthers just absolutely out of pitching, and actually did have the lead, though, as I enumerated earlier. And then the Chants were able to come back and rule them 17-7 in 8 innings. And the Chants host number 2 Clemson on Tuesday night before going to Marshall. So that is a huge RPI game for them if they could find a way to beat Clemson on Tuesday night.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is if you're Gary, how do you approach it? Because you really can't afford to burn up any pitching wise, because if you don't win your games on the road, you don't get into the conference tournament. You're not. I mean,
you won't get in. Yeah, you're no doubt.
You're not getting in, and so I'm sure he's tussling with it right now as to how much does he really expose, because we're not talking about a Tuesday Friday game. Remember, we're talking about Tuesday Thursday.
Yes, 48 hours later after you
yeah.
travel from Conway to Huntington, West Virginia.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like, you're not going to be able to run somebody out there for an extended period of time if you think you're going to use them on the weekend, starting on Thursday. So it's a shorter day rest for all these coaches to be making decisions about their bullpens and their staffs. So it's going to be, he's in an interesting situation with that game.
And how big would it be for them? Of course, this argument applies to a lot of schools, Coach. But how big would it be for them? The pitching staff's been decimated. They don't have the pitching to get through the deep Sun Belt tournament. I mean, a regional will be easier than the Sun Belt tournament.
Yes.
From a pitching standpoint. The
100%.
Sun Belt tournament's just, if you don't have pitching, you won't be able to make it through, because it's just so brutal. Right. It's an old school tournament.
Right.
Hardly anybody plays those old school tournaments anymore. Sun Belt still does. I love them for it. But you talk about Clemson on Tuesday, then Thursday, Friday, Saturday at Marshall. And then if you don't get in, and they got a shot still to get in that top 6. But if you don't, you got to turn around and play again on Tuesday. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, you got
with the decimated pitching.
You have Sunday, Monday. You got 48 hours off. Yeah. You have Sunday, Monday. So the guy you start on Thursday is going to be short a day rest, as he already is going to be this week. Whoever your Friday starter was is going to be a day short this week. It'll be 2 days short the next week. If you try to swing him back around and throw him on Tuesday, which you probably won't be able to. You probably have to hold him to Wednesday to give him, 2 days short. But and it gets tight this time of year when you start trying to stack your pitching up and get your guys lined up. And, they've not been in this situation that I'm aware of, or that I remember the Chants from having to, make sure they even get into the tournament and then trying to stay out of the play-in game.
I mean, I think last year they were able to go to the tournament, and then they didn't even use their top guy, their number 1 starting pitcher, and they may not have used even their number 2 starting pitcher in the Sun Belt tournament. They felt like they were getting in the NCAA regionals, which of course they did, and of course they were able to get to the championship game I'm
Yep.
No, they did. They got to the semifinals
Se-
and got eliminated by
Semifinals.
Louisiana. Yeah, they got to
Yep.
the semifinals, Saturday semifinals, and Louisiana eliminated them. But they were fine with that. They knew they'd done what they came to do. But yeah, their pitching's a wreck, and Gary Gilmore will be the first one to tell you that. So it's going to be a challenge. It is going to be a real challenge for them. Okay, last thing before we talk to Stephen Trout here is the latest D1 baseball projections came out last Wednesday, and will come out again this Wednesday. In the latest, they had 5 Sun Belt teams in the projections. 5. You think
Yeah.
that's going to happen? You think that'll happen, Coach?
I
You
don't
think
know.
5?
No, I just said I'm agreeing with what you just said. No, I saw it
I
too.
know,
I'm
but do
just
you
saying
think that'll happen? Do you think 5 will get in?
I would love to be hopeful with it. I would tell you
Yeah.
that,
Wouldn't that be
and
great?
would love.
Wouldn't that be
It'd be
fabulous?
unreal. No, it'd be unreal. And I think that shows that there's not a whole lot of separation between a lot of conferences and a lot of different teams. I think it shows the respect over the last couple of years of what the Sun Belt has done and the number of teams that have gotten in. I think what's interesting now is you're seeing, used to be it was just an RPI driven thought process, and that's what the metric, the tools that the committee was left with, and now you're seeing them use. I'm assuming they're probably using some of these other metrics as well. And there's a difference between them. There really is. I mean, and you look at the Diamond Sports ranking and different things, the KPI ranking. There's differences in that and the RPI. And I think, if I was a committee member, I don't know if they are or not, but if I was a committee member, I'd take them all in and look at all of them and trying to make a decision, and trying to get as much information as I can. But yes, to answer your question, boy, it'd be fun. I'd be unreal. And but I think again, it speaks of the history of the last couple of years and the respect that the Sun Belt has now from D1 baseball, from Baseball America, and baseball and the college baseball committees that are going to make those choices.
Yeah, I think that Louisiana and Troy were 2 seeds, and they had Southern Miss, Coastal, and James Madison as 3 seeds. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think the Sun Belt.
where you want to be this time of year is you want to be a 2. You want to be projected as a 2 because then you're in. The 3s are fluid,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but if you're a 2, you're probably in, but you are in.
yeah. I would think out of that 5, I would think that Coastal and James Madison are probably in the most uneasy
Yep.
of the situations. I think Southern Miss is going to
Yep.
get in. And I think Troy and I think Louisiana, I think, is going to get in. Don't care whatever their, the RPI's been sitting around 50. I don't care. And I think
Yeah,
any
but
coach in the country would tell you, man, they don't want to play Louisiana. So
well, no, and you can go look inside of some of these other rankings, and they're inside their 20s in some of these
okay,
other ones,
yeah. So
and so
I think
that's
those 3.
where
I think those 3 are pretty solid. I think those other 2, Coastal and James Madison, are kind of, they're kind of on rocky seas right now, and they may be able to navigate it through and get 5 in. That would be amazing. I think that would be a record. I don't know that the Sun Belt's
yes,
ever had. Yeah, 4 I believe has been the record, and that's the last 2 years, and we're looking at the possibility of 5. So amazing stuff as we get ready for the Sun Belt tournament. Time now to hear from Texas State head coach Stephen Trout. Coach Trout, thanks a lot for being with us. Congratulations on a big series win against Troy. You take 2 out of 3 from the hottest team in the Sun Belt Conference coming in. What did you see from your guys over the weekend?
Yeah, for us, we're trying to get into the tournament, and so we've been in tournament style for the last couple of weeks, and so it's just trying to win the day, and for us, we're just playing for our lives every single day. So that's kind of the mindset heading in, and this team's been up and down. We've been a 500 team almost all year long, but we've had some really good wins. We've had some bad losses. It's a very streaky team, and so our guys still believe that when we play really good baseball and all the things that we can control, we can beat anybody. And so, the last 2 weeks, I feel like we've played good baseball and had success. And so they believe that all year long. I think part of it's just getting it done on the field. And yesterday, find a way to come through in 11 innings and finally, making enough pitches in some tough situations. And, of course, coming up with some big hits against a really, really good Troy team. Hopefully gives us more confidence heading into another really tough week on the road at Southern Miss.
No doubt about it. And you got McNeese on Tuesday as well in Lake Charles. So it's an extended week for you guys. Through 7 weeks, you guys were 8-13 in the conference. Things weren't looking so good. But as you mentioned, you've been in kind of tournament mode these last 2 weeks. You've gone 4 out of 6, beating Old Dominion, a very good team, beating Troy, one of the best teams in the Sun Belt so far this season, taking those series. You're able to do that at home. Now you're getting ready to go out on the road. But what has clicked for your team in particular? Has there been anything, physically at the plate, on the mound, in the field that's clicked for your team these last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for them was we sat down before the Old Dominion series and got a big grease board out and wrote down, what are we doing when things are going well for us and what are we doing when things are going bad for us? And they listed probably, 10 to 15 things on both sides of it. A lot of them were more energy, focus, playing loose, things like that. Yeah. And I think out of the 20 to 25 things that were on our board, probably 20 of them were controllables. And that's one thing I wanted our guys to see is that, like, when we play good baseball, if we just do the things that we can control, showing up focused with energy, having positive bats, executing pitches, we're a really good baseball team. And when we do the opposite, when we stress or we're not playing as loose and we're playing tight and we don't have a ton of energy, we're not a very good baseball team. And so I think it just showed them that, hey, these are things that are in our control if we're going to make a run at this thing. And so, we've done small things here and there to just, as coaches do, to try to get, your offense going or your pitching staff going and things like that. But I think to me, it was just them realizing that, hey, we're in control of this thing. And so obviously we've got great opponents we're going to play, doing that on the road again this week. But at the end of the day, if we're playing really good baseball the way that this team can, we can beat anybody in the country.
Well, Chase Mora had a spectacular freshman season for you. It's been a tougher go for him here in his sophomore year, batting below 260, I think. But he does have 6 homers. He does have 47 RBI, and that leads your team. Are we starting to see the revival of Chase these last 2 weekends against Old Dominion? He was our top second baseman on our starting 9 that we name here on the podcast for the entire Sun Belt last week. And then, of course, this past weekend, he has the big base hit in the 9th inning to tie it up in the series deciding game on Sunday, then hits the 2-run walk-off bomb. So we start to see Chase starting to get past some of his struggles, even though he's been productive, but being a little bit more consistent at the plate.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an up and down year for him, coming off a big season. As we told him, people are going to go into the game plan understanding who Chase Moore is. And so obviously that brings a lot of different things, how they're going to pitch him, not let him beat them early. And then it's a mental game, right? You're trying to find your confidence back. And so the one thing he's continued to do is just continue to work and continue to try to make changes to get there. And you've seen progress over probably the last month, to be honest with you. He's back to hitting, above 330 over the last month. And so, but the one thing I know about Chase, it's not if he's going to get going, it's when he's going to get going. And it usually gets going when the game really matters. And, he did that at Minute Maid against Texas and Houston in a big moment. He did that yesterday. So for me, whenever the game's on the line, that's a guy you want up to hit because that guy's just a winner. And it just tends to work out for those guys when they have that in their DNA. And so, yeah, looking forward to what he does this week and hopefully propel this team into the Sun Belt tournament.
What a performance by Cam Bush and Rhett McCafferty on Friday in the series opener. I know Cam's a guy, that was only his 5th start of the season. You've used him 13 times out of the pen. And, of course, Rhett's been probably your most consistent arm out of the pen the entire year. But a 4-hit shutout against arguably the hottest offense in the Sun Belt Conference. Are you able to duplicate that again this weekend? And I know you're going on a day shorter because this is going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series.
Yeah, let's hope so. That's the game plan. But, yeah, really proud of those guys. Obviously being senior weekend, last time to pitch in our ballpark. And then, of course, Rhett came back in yesterday to finish it out. He wasn't expected to throw and came to me, I think, in the 10th, said, Coach, I'm going. So he went and got loose. And just it felt like a tournament style, right? Hey, Coach, I got to put the team on my back and go make a pitch for us to get out of it. And so, about 3 weeks ago, we kind of flipped our rotation and tried to kind of do the opener. And Cam and Rhett were 2 of those guys that we tried to open the game with and try to get 3 innings maybe out of, and then try to get it to maybe our guys that have been starting to try to lengthen out the game a little bit. And I think they gathered confidence doing that as well. And then when some guys weren't feeling as good, they hopped into those roles, and Cam took it over. And yeah, I mean, it's their last run at it. So it's fun to watch those guys get out there and compete. And yeah, want to do something for Texas State in their last run. And they know that for us to be successful, they got to get out there and give us a great start and give us a great outing. So yeah, week short, but I think those guys will be ready to roll. Hopefully can do it again.
Well, you mentioned it was senior weekend. You got whopping 16 seniors on your roster. Now, not all of them are four-year players. I mean, that just doesn't happen that often in college baseball, but you have 16 seniors on your roster. They were playing their final weekend in San Marcos, and August Ramirez, who's been a big bat for you now all along, hit his 9th home run, 23rd of his career. But this senior group, especially those guys that have been there the whole time, what a special group. They were part of that run that made the deep run and nearly won the Stanford Regional a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for me personally, it was my first class that we recruited to when I was the head guy. And so so a lot of those guys have been with me my entire tenure here as the head coach. And so, yeah, special group, been part of a lot of wins, a lot of special things we've done here at Texas State. And so, but even better is it's not just about them as great players. They're great people, and they're going to be really successful off the field and to be, really big in society. And so really excited for what they do with their lives and excited to follow that. But yeah, some big names in there that have done a lot for us. Tony Roby's been a mainstay for us, usually on the weekends. But yeah, August Ramirez, what a weekend that guy had. Kind of same thing. We haven't caught him 3 days in a row in a long time, but it's senior weekend, and we got to find a way to win. And so he did that and had some really big swings for us. And so, yeah, special group to our program, but a really special group to myself just because they were kind of the first group to get in there and take this thing off of and starting the 2020 season into now.
Yeah, no doubt. A guy like August, I mean, from here on out, I guess the message is you can rest when the season's over. So, I mean, you got to go out there, and it's tough to catch 3 consecutive games, especially with the staggered start times, and you're playing in the heat of the day, man. It is a grind, no doubt, and he has been huge for you. Dalen Pena's another guy in the outfield, batting .257, but he has 14 doubles and 7 home runs, 40 runs driven in for you this season. He's another one of those seniors who's been with you.
Yeah, he's a streaky guy, and so for us, you look at it and you get caught up in the average all the time. I think as coaches are looking at numbers, and the average is probably the biggest line in baseball in my opinion. So it's about just having quality at bats, but more importantly, who are you driving in? You got to be great at what you do. If you're a table setter, get on base. If you're a guy that drives guys in, just do that, but don't get caught up in your average because your average is going to lie to you all the time on what kind of hitter you are. And so, yeah, we got to continue to get him going. And hopefully, like I said, he's kind of like Chase. A lot of times he hits a hot streak, and when he's hot, it's really tough to get him out. So hopefully this is that week for Dalen.
No doubt this is the time to hit that hot streak. Another senior I want to ask you about is your starting pitcher, Drayton Brown. Of course, first year in the program, a transfer from Northwestern State. But he's been your top starting pitcher the entire year. And ironically, he had another fabulous start this past weekend, but that was the game he ended up losing. But he went 5 scoreless, 1-hit ball against this Troy team. And I know Troy scored 5 in the 7th to end up winning that game. But tell me about what you've seen from Drayton this year. Doesn't have the win-loss record, and that is not necessarily a barometer of how great a pitcher is, but he's been solid for you.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. He's probably been our most consistent pitcher all year long. And in this day and age where there's so much velocity and guys throwing, 94, 97, and it's like unbelievable what some of these guys are doing in college baseball, he's kind of old school. I mean, it's 87, 88. He'll touch a 90 every once in a while, but he's got a changeup that's really good, and he's got a slider, but his go-to pitch is his big curveball. And it's just a beauty to watch him command the baseball, pitch to different quadrants. And he's steadily out front, and then he's steadily going to use different off-speed pitches to keep them off balance. And so it's not a comfortable bat in there for those hitters just because he can go all the way from 88 to all the way down to 78, all the way down to 68. And so he does a great job of mixing speeds and doing different things. And I think it shows a lot of our guys on our staff that it's not about throwing 95, that's awesome. But if you throw it down the middle and you don't have an off speed to go with it, that ball is going to get hit a long ways in this day and age in college baseball. So just a really good pitcher, really good command. But the most impressive thing about him, he's such a competitive guy. And when he's out there, he's going to go compete like crazy and give you a chance to win in any role. We started him out of the bullpen, and then we've obviously got him into the role in the weekend. And so, he's been our most consistent guy, and hopefully he's got a few more left in that right arm.
Another guy I want to ask you about is a freshman, Ryan Farber. He got off to a great start. Then you lost him for 4 weeks because of injury. And I'm kind of guessing that what we're seeing here with your team kind of coincides with him getting back to where he was. But he leads you with a 350-plus batting average. He's over 470 on-base percentage. And, it seems like when Ryan's in there and going well, the Bobcats are playing well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. People call it the spark plug or whatever you want, but he's just a really, really good baseball player. His IQ is off the charts, his work ethic's off the chart, and for a freshman to step in, what he did early, and then had to sit out for a little while with his injury, and then even come back. He's just a professional player, man, and so we're so fortunate to have him. And you're exactly right. When he's in our lineup, there's something different about it just because he makes us go. And so we've had him in the leadoff spot with Cam Wild going really well. We moved him to the 3-hole just to have guys on in front of him. But he's just a veteran hitter and at a young age. And so he doesn't get out of the strike zone. They're going to throw strikes to him to get him out. And so he does a phenomenal job. And so, he's gutting it out right now for us. And Dylan's still with his injury some, but he's laying it on the line for the Bobcats. And, what a fantastic freshman for us, and one that's going to be a great player for us for a long time to come.
One other guy I want to ask you about is your junior third baseman, Aaron Lugo, another first-year guy. You brought him in from community college. 315 average, leads the team 10 home runs, has 42 RBI, 56 total hits, leads you in slugging percentage, has 100 total bases on the year, not only playing a very critical part of the infield on that third base corner, but also swinging a big bat.
Yeah, first off with him, you're not going to find a better defender in college baseball. And so he actually was more of a second baseman probably, second, a little bit more short. And we thought, hey, we could throw him over at third with kind of what we had coming back. He's got unbelievable hands. And so we thought maybe we can get there. He went to work on his arm strength. And if you ever watch him play now, you'll never know that was something that he had to work on because he's got an absolute rocket over there. But, every day he amazes me on the plays he makes. Just balls to his forehand, to his backhand, slow rollers. He makes it look so easy. We've just become accustomed to him making it, but it is some really tough plays that he is really good. He's a plus defender. With the bat, he's hitting in our 4-hole, and he's for a guy of his stature, he's got a lot of pop in that bat, and so he can use the whole field. Hit a couple balls this weekend that should have went out of the ballpark with the wind. Wasn't in our favor this weekend on the entire weekend. But same thing. When he's kind of like Chase Moore and Ryan Farber and Pena. When the game's on the line, you want that guy in the box for you. And so he does it from all areas, from defense to offense to base running, and from his leadership standpoint. So just a really fun baseball player to go watch.
So this is tournament race baseball. You go into the final weekend. You're a game up on Georgia State now for the 10th and final spot in the tournament. So you got to win games, and also you're going to be watching what they do. But if you take care of business, you're in the tournament right now as we sit here and talk today, playing at Southern Miss. So last weekend you got the hottest team in the Sun Belt in Troy, and now you have the new hottest team in the Sun Belt. The Golden Eagles have won 7 in a row, which is a season best winning streak for them going into the week, and they have Ole Miss on Tuesday. But what's the message to your team as you go to Hattiesburg, one of the toughest places to play, knowing you probably need to get 2 wins in Hattiesburg to get in the tournament?
Yeah, from the get-go when we kind of got into this position, I told our guys everything is still in our control. And so everything's in our control as far as if we just go perform, we don't have to worry about what another team does or what a series holds up or do the scoreboard watching. And luckily heading into this weekend, we're still in the same boat. And so if we just go take care of business and do what we do and take control of what we do, we'll be in Montgomery next week. And so obviously if it doesn't go our way, then we'll do some scoreboard watching. But obviously just back to what we control. And so as we told them for the last 3 weeks, our backs are against the wall. We have no other decision than to just go win and to go win baseball games and just to fight like crazy, just to get into that tournament and then see what happens. And so, yeah, I've actually never been to Southern Miss. I played them back when I was at Houston in Conference USA. We played a few times and had some great battles. And so I'm excited to go to Hattiesburg and heard nothing but great things about it. Obviously, have a great program there and a great team this year. And so excited to go in there on the road. But this is the best time of the year, right? We actually leave in the morning, go to McNeese. We're going to stay on the road and keep driving to Southern Miss and keep playing. There's no school right now. It's just baseball and doing what we love to do. So hopefully we're packing our bags for 2 weeks and hopefully not coming home till then. And so that's the game plan. So no, it's going to be a tough challenge, but that's what we do this thing for. And if you're a competitor, this is exactly how you want to line it up. Go play the hottest team in their ballpark, with your life on the line. And here we go. So we're excited for it.
I know this is where a lot of times you see baseball teams really start to click in. School's out. This is as close as, life is to being a professional baseball player as a college baseball player, because it's just baseball at this point. You're traveling, you're taking a long road trip. Sometimes those are great for team bonding, and your team's already playing well. It's great to see that your team is playing well and playing up to closer to the capability that I know you expected of this team this year. So good luck in Hattiesburg this weekend, and look forward to talking to you when you guys get ready to play in Montgomery next week.
Awesome. Thanks for what you're doing for the Sun Belt, for college baseball in general, and coverage of Texas State. So looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be a fun week, and appreciate all you do.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Coach Trout. And just so everybody knows, Coach Harrington did not skip out on that. He had business to attend to today. And it was a recorded interview, as I'm sure you probably figured out. But Coach was not trying to sidestep Coach Trout. But,
no, absolutely. Actually, I would have been. I wouldn't have for sure sidestepped.
I know he's your guy.
He's
your guy.
He is, and I'm sorry I missed it, but actually, a real job got in had to take care of this morning and wasn't able to participate. So we still got a lot to talk about.
We do. All right, let's hit our Sunbelt starting nine. So we're going to start with the catcher, Caden Bodine of Coastal Carolina. 6 for 14, couple of doubles, couple of home runs, 9 RBI, 7 runs scored. First baseman Alec Patino of Texas State, 4 for 12, couple of doubles, home run, 4 RBI, 1 run scored. Second base, now we're going to have an honorable mention there too, but we're going to go Maverick Stallings out of Old Dominion. He was 4 for 12, couple of home runs, 7 RBI, 2 runs scored. And Chase Mora gets our honorable mention from Texas State. Yep. He's 3 for 14. But his hits were big ones. He had an RBI single in the 9th that tied the game in the series finale, then hit the 2-run walk-off bomb in the 11th. So he's honorable mention. Shortstop Kyle DeBarge, Louisiana. I mean, he's just kind of got that position on lockdown. 7 for 13, couple of doubles, couple of home runs, 7 RBI, 7 run score. But we do have an honorable mention there too. Ozzie Pratt of Southern Miss went 10 for 15. He had a 5-hit day in the series finale. A couple of doubles, 4 RBI, 7 runs scored. And Will Mize, Georgia State, man, this guy is just raking. He's back on the starting nine again, consecutive weeks. Georgia State in a losing effort. He went 8 for 14, couple of doubles, 3 home runs, 7 RBI, and 8 runs scored.
When you look at the infield part of this, of course, DeBarge has been on. Has he never not been on there? I don't know. Has he been on there
maybe once? I think there's maybe been one week where he wasn't.
Yeah, and then and then to have an honorable mention of 10 for 15. I think of the week. He feels like, what do I got to do to get?
What do I got to do?
This list? I got to go 10 for. What I got to go 11 for 15 for crying out loud. And but and the other side of this is just a personal thing for me. I'm voting for Maverick Stallings just because of the name. Maverick, and then Stallings, Gene Stallings, who I knew as a long time ago, was a friend of mine. So I'm pulling for this guy anyway, just because of his name from Old Dominion. But I like the idea with Mora putting him on there as an honorable mention too. He had to come up with the 2 big hits and the game tying hit, as you mentioned, and the homer. So I like this new rule that you've got, that you pulled out today, that we have honorable mentions in this lineup. I didn't know we had honorable mentions, but I like the way we're playing. I like the way the rules are how do we say this, fluid.
It's our game. It's our game. We make the rules.
We can do what we want. I like that.
That's right.
All
Our game,
right,
we
we'll
make the
keep going
rules.
to the
And I
outfield.
agree with you. I agree with you with Maverick, man. If baseball doesn't suit him, he can go to the rodeo or something with a name like that.
Yeah, that's right. Something, right?
Our outfield and DH, Carson Pato of Southern Miss, 5 for 11, double, 2 homers, 8 RBI, 7 runs scored. Davis Gillespie, he's back on the list for the second straight week for Southern Miss. He went 5 for 11, 3 doubles, 5 RBI, 6 runs scored. Outfielder Graham Brown, Coastal Carolina, 6 for 10, 3 doubles, a homer, 1 RBI, 9 runs scored. And, I'll just throw in, just improvising here, a couple of honorable mentions too, because it was so difficult. Brendan O'Donnell from James Madison and Fenwick Trimble again. Man, those guys just had monster weeks. It's just so hard. It's hard. I struggle with, okay, what's the number that I really love that's important to me that gets them on this list? DH Slade Wilkes, Southern Miss, 7 for 14, 1 double, 3 homers, 7 RBI, 7 runs scored. Honorable mention there is Derek Bender from Coastal Carolina. Yeah. He hit 3 bombs and he was the honorable mention. 6 for 15, a double, 8 RBI, 5 runs scored.
Yeah, it's a tough week to make the lineup.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of guys had some big weekends that were honorable mentions in the lineups or pinch hitters in this lineup, and it is a tough to get in there. But I tell you what, a lot of these guys, a lot of these guys have been in the lineup already this year. Shows you the consistency of the type of players they are, and then right now the hitters Brown and Bender, they need to go out there and have good weekends this weekend too for Coastal. If they're going to have a chance, because the offense is what's propelling them and driving them, and then you go back and the infield part of this, to me, I go back and I look at these guys. First time for Patino, and he did have a good weekend at the 2 doubles in the opposite field homer, but these offensive numbers are predicated off it. A lot of that coming off that series at Georgia State. You got 5 of the guys that were in that series, because it's hard to run from that when you see so many runs scored in that series.
Yeah. I mean, when there's 1,000 runs scored, somebody's doing something right. It just seems like it was 1,000. All right, our starting rotation. Again, I really struggle with the pitching this week. So if you don't like it, email Ty about it. So I'll throw it on.
I'm fine with it. I'm a coach. I'm used to it. I've been used to it all my whole life, so I'm good with that.
We could have gone many different ways, but I'm going to go on my starting rotation. Right-handed pitcher Carson Fluno, of Louisiana.
Yep.
He got the win. 1 run, 3 hits, 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, 0 walks, which is huge in my book. The left-handed pitcher Cam Hill from South Alabama. He's their Friday guy. He got a no decision, but no runs, 3 hits, and 6 innings, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks. And then Drayton Brown, who is really Texas State's best pitcher from a starting rotation.
Yep.
He got a no decision, but he had 5 scoreless innings of 1 hit ball against Troy, with a couple of walks and a couple of strikeouts.
I can respond to the Drayton Brown outing, and Fluno I got to see throw a little bit too in that game. But Drayton Brown's been able to throw that big slow breaker and get him off balance, and he commanded it so well. And then he was able to throw fastballs on them a little bit, meaning on the inner half, and lock their barrels down. And you and I both know that Troy team's a really offensive team. And so even though he didn't get a decision, the 5 innings pitch, I mean, he 1 hit, you're doing something pretty good. And then I did get to see Fluno pitch just a little bit. And I'm going to say this, when you go in there nowadays and you go no base on balls, because the strike zone's smaller than it's ever been, because of TrackMan, and we'll have that conversation later on again, and everybody, it's permeating all over the country right now, finally. I'm not blaming the umpires. They're getting handed a deal at the end of the day, telling them this is how many pitches you missed and all this kind of stuff. And so they're if that's how they're getting graded, they got to call to it. I'm not blaming. So my point is, the strike zone's smaller than what a normal college strike zone has been over the years. And you're coming out of there with no walk or 1 walk or 2 walks in the outing, you're doing pretty good. And I heard you say the no walks and the 2 walks. That's pretty good, and you're 100% on that. It is, particularly now in college baseball.
And I think that's why we've seen the explosion of the offense again, because strike zone's tighter. Guys are getting into hitters counts a lot more, sitting there waiting for the pitch. I mean, they're like, okay, man, you're gonna have to throw. You're gonna throw it. You got to hit some of the plate here, or it's not going to be a strike. So I'm just going to wait till you get it, get it in a spot where I can drive it. So I think that's had a lot to do with it. TrackMan's had a huge
Well,
part in what we've seen in the offense.
there's no question. Now, remember, umpires would call this ball off the plate for a long time. So let's just say it's an 0-0 count to a really good hitter. And you throw a ball that was a strike a year ago, 2 years ago, for sure 3 years ago, it was a strike, and now it's not. And all of a sudden, you're pitching uphill, and you're behind, right? Well, you can't go back out there again. And then all of a sudden, you look up, he takes it, so he doesn't fear that pitch anymore. So that barrel now is slowed down. It's not as quick to have to go protect that ball out there or that ball in here. So the hitter's now going, I'm wiping that out. So it's changed dramatically, and the pitchers don't have a choice at this time but to go to the white part of the plate often enough, and that's where you get into danger zone. And I think, walks are up and hits are up, because once you come out of realizing you can't throw it out there, you got to go to the middle part plate, like I just said. And I think it's changed the scoring in college baseball. We'll get a chance to analyze it at the end of the year when all the smoke is up. And I want to make this clear. I'm not blaming the umpires. They're doing what they're being asked to do by TrackMan and call the balls and strikes like that. Yeah, that's right.
They want to work.
If you're going to get a bad grade,
if they're missing calls, they don't get to work. Yeah, they don't get to work anymore if they are not calling balls and strikes according to what TrackMan is telling people what the balls and strikes should be. So it's like getting graded every game. I guess I don't know how often they got graded in the past, but now they get graded every game. So it's a tough job.
Yeah, and one more thing on that is that, remember, we're not professional baseball players. This is collegiate baseball. So moving forward at the end of this year, when we got all the analytics get in, number of pitches thrown, which I think is going to be a huge tell of what it was college baseball was like. The next one is the obvious one: how many walks were thrown overall in college baseball. I think the other piece that coaches are having to adjust to right now, you're seeing pitchers get pulled out of games, or the pitch count's higher, and they're not used to that many hits and that many walks in early in games like that. So you see starting pitchers coming out earlier. So my point is, I think when all that's said and done, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit it. I've been wrong so many times in my life. I'm saying sorry and saying I was wrong is part of my vocabulary. But in the end, to create a strike zone that allows that to be off the plate a little bit of strike, or the only other option is, in my mind, is if you let them have whatever that appears to be, a half a ball off the plate to be a gray area, or you can't. I'd say you can't. You could. I don't see them making the home plate bigger. Right? I don't see that. Who's to say the game has changed? Right? We've evolved. Things have changed about the game. So do you make the play? So all that's going to be hammered out at the end, not today, not now, where I'm making your podcast and our podcast even longer, getting long-winded about it. So at the end of the year, we'll be able to figure it out.
Bullpen. Rhett McCafferty of Texas State. I mean, he got a win and a save. He got a win and a save over the weekend. 2 appearances, 3 2/3 scoreless innings, just 1 hit, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Joe Vigazzi of James Madison, 2 appearances and a save. He went 2 1/3 scoreless with 3 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. And Chandler Best from Southern Miss, he got a save. He went 3 scoreless with 1 hit, no walks, 3 strikeouts. That's 2 left-handed relievers. McCafferty and Best are left-handers, and Vigazzi is a right-hander, and that's our bullpen for the weekend. We had a ton of candidates in the bullpen, too.
Toughest outs in baseball to get. Last 3, and you got to have somebody emotionally good enough. Physically, they got to be good enough, but emotionally, they got to be able to do it. And I had a chance to see McCafferty because I was calling those games. He was really electric on Friday night. He had, his fastball was electric to a lot of those.
Big strikeout.
A lot of left-handed hitters. Yeah, Troy's got a lot of left-handed hitters. His breaker was really special on Friday night, and he didn't pitch on Saturday. Came back in Sunday late in that game and faced left-handers, and then ended up hanging in there long enough to get the win and stuff. His stuff was really good again.
Yeah, I think he's going to, he's probably going to have to do that again against Southern Miss. Probably going to need him twice against the Golden
Yep.
Eagles if they're in that position. They'll
Yep.
certainly exercise that option. All right, before we close it out, we have out of the 7 series we have coming up this week, and only one has no impact on
Yep.
the standings. So we really have 6 huge series this weekend.
We do.
What's the one you got your eye on the most? You think?
Yeah, there's not just one,
Yeah.
because the combinations make right. The combinations make a one, even kind of. I don't know if I'm not making sense with that. I guess if you take 2 series, it implicates each other, right? The Southern Miss, Texas State, Georgia State, and their combination now, South Alabama and Louisiana. Those interest me because South Alabama, wants to hang in there and make sure that they make postseason. Louisiana is trying to keep moving forward from an RPI perspective beyond just clinching up, and so there's a lot. And then personal perspective, I'm going to watch Coastal. Gary and I have been friends for a long time, and have known each other a while, and got to be closer friends. And not that I'm not friends with the other coaches, I am, but they're not retiring, and
Right.
so I am interested. And I'm not saying I'm rooting against Marshall, but again, I'm going to have an eye on it. You asked me what I was going to pay attention to, and I'm just being truthful. I'm going to have an eye on it, and to see how they do.
I would agree with that. I mean, there's some sentimentality there. I think you and I are both very fond of Gary. And if the people listening to the podcast, watching the podcast, knew Gary, they'd be fond of him too. He's just a great guy, great coach, great person, and you'd be pulling for him. So you would hate to see it end and him not get to the tournament and have a shot to get to the NCAAs here in this final season. I think they're going to get there, but the fact that it's up in the air here in week 10 of the conference schedule is probably something that we would not have predicted when the conference schedule started back in March. That said, Marshall, they have a chance to be a spoiler here. And I think that's a great selling point for Coach Beals and the Thundering Herd. They're likely not, unless they sweep, of course, going to make the Sun Belt tournament. Even if they sweep, they might not make it in. But they do have a chance to be a spoiler against one of the kingpins of not just the Sun Belt, but also college baseball.
Yeah, and here's the piece on, and look again, on Coastal's, what Coastal did, and really kind of given people the mid major at that time hope that they could go and win a national championship and go to Omaha first and then win a national championship. There's been other teams get there, mid major wise, and some of the not as big of baseball powers at the time, but they won it. They were the last man standing, and I think if you asked every Division I coach what that meant and what that looked like when they won, it meant something. There was a hope that was put into, they interjected into different programs in college baseball from different levels. So that's why, from the sentiment part of it for college baseball, and again, we don't, as coaches, we don't get to pick always how we go out. Some do, some get to pick, and then Gary made that choice at the beginning of the year to say this was going to be it for him, and he got to tour a lot of different places. It's been fun to watch. I've seen some of the different things people have done for him, and that part of it is really cool and special and fun. And I even saw a little bit of Gary Gilmore Day at Coastal. He even got the bucket of water dumped on him after they won that game, that first game that day, and which I don't know if he really liked that much or not. But probably
I don't
not,
think I would have liked it either. So.
No, but anyway, it represents a lot. So there's a lot going on this weekend. The fun part of it is it's all going to happen. Every game, every pitch, every inning is going to be so critical in so many different ways, and positioning, and even the teams that are in trying to get to one side of a bracket or another, or trying to get into the top 6, obviously, and then some just fighting to get into that top 10. So it's going to be exciting Sun Belt baseball.
Well, they won the national championship in 2016, and maybe the biggest. I mean, it's certainly here in this modern era of college baseball, the biggest national championship, biggest stunner. I think the only. I mean, I don't know how. And you're from that part of the country. You tell me when Wayne Graham and Rice won this national championship,
Yeah,
and what was it in 2003? That to me,
yeah,
that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's even partly comparable, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, 100%. And but yeah, that's a great way to put it too. And I think that Rice had been playing in those super regionals and had been close a couple times. And but yeah, 100%. I think that's all part of it as well. And it just gave people, you know, um, coaches and programs. I just think it energized them and administration. I'm sorry, and
It did. No,
administration
it
too.
did. It did. It
Yeah.
did. Well, we could talk all day and night, and we're going to get that opportunity next week. So we'll save our voices at this point and call it a show, call it a podcast,
Yeah.
because we've got at least 15 games next week and maybe 17. So for those of you who like to watch the podcast on a weekly basis, we won't do one next week, just simply because our schedules are slammed with the tournament. But what we will do is once the tournament's over, we'll come back and we'll do one pre-NCAA regionals for all the teams that get in. So you can mark your
Yep.
calendar for that. So after Selection Monday, we'll come back earlier in that week and we'll preview the NCAA regionals. But, Coach,
Hey,
great
what we should
podcast.
do?
And
Hey,
yep.
you know what we should do is on those days where we have 4 games, we should do an hour-long podcast right after those.
Well, if we did that, we probably would just, if we did an hour-long podcast right after the fourth game, we probably could just stay there and start the first game
Keep
because
rolling to the next one,
that's
baby.
about how much sleep you get, but from
Keep
the
rolling
last
to the
game of the
next
night to
one.
the first game of the next day.
I'm telling you,
We'll just
and I'm not complaining, not
no,
one little bit, because I love it. I know you do too, and it's fun. This tournament's always been fun, and Tuesday will
it'll
get
be
here
fun.
soon enough. But I'll be excited when it does.
It'll be fun. I'll see you next week, Coach.
You got it.